Now, alrighty, so the big news of the day is that apparently Donald Trump hates children. Now, if you're on the left, this comes as no surprise because you always thought that Donald Trump hated children, right? I mean, that's not a giant shock, but the reality is that Donald Trump supposedly is a guy who wants to remove children from the arms of their parents as those parents cross the border illegally. So you're coming across the border to make a new life for yourself, and you've brought your child, and you're picked up by ICE, and they cruelly take those children and they rip them away from you. They take the children and they rip them away from you. Okay, there is only one problem with all of this. Okay, there's only one problem with all of this. This is just not the case. Okay, the reason I say this is just not the case, I'm going to go through the actual applicable law here so that you know what it is that is going on. Okay, the reality is that the law requires that if you cross the border illegally and we arrest you for it, that your children cannot stay in custody with you. Okay, that's just the way it is. Okay, the way that it is according to the law. Okay, and that is a 2008 ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. According to the law, you are not allowed to take the children and leave them with their parents in custody. Okay, so the Ninth Circuit Court ruled that non-detention of minors applies to accompanied illegal immigrants. The reason this happened is there was an agreement, it's called the Flores Agreement, back from the 1990s, in which the federal government was sued, and they came to a federal settlement, and the federal settlement said that when unaccompanied illegal children come across the border, they have to be released, remanded into the custody of some sort of parental figure or guardian in the United States. And then the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in 2016 ruled that those children actually had to be released, whether or not they came with a parent. So you come across with mommy and daddy, we still cannot keep you in custody for a long period of time. We still have to release you ASAP. Now, the problem with this is this has created a spate of headlines that Donald Trump, because he is more strictly enforcing border laws, that because he is doing that, this means that that he is somehow separating the children from their parents. Again, it is by operation of law that the kids are removed from their parents. It is not Donald Trump decided, I want to remove children from their parents, and therefore I'm cruel and nasty, and that's what I want to do. That's not how any of this works. Rich Lowry has a good column making all of this clear. He points out in his column at National Review today, the Trump administration is not changing the rules that pertain to separating an adult from a child. Those remain the same. Separation happens only if officials find that the adult is falsely claiming to be the child's parent, or is a threat to the child, or is put into criminal proceedings. And it's the last that is operative here. The past practice had been to give a free pass to an adult who is part of a family unit. The new Trump policy is to prosecute all adults. The idea is to send a signal that we are serious about our laws and to create a deterrent against reentry. Illegal entry is a misdemeanor. Illegal reentry, however, is a felony. When a migrant is prosecuted for illegal entry, writes Rich Lowry, he or she is taken into custody by the U.S. Marshals. In no circumstance anywhere in the United States do the marshals care for the children of people they take into custody. The child is taken into the custody of HHS, that's Health and Human Services, who cares for them at temporary shelters. The criminal proceedings are exceptionally short, assuming there is no aggravating factor such as a prior illegal entity or another crime. The migrants generally plead guilty, and they are then sentenced to time served, typically all on the same day, although practices vary along the border. After this, they are returned to the custody of ICE for deportation. If the adult then wants to go home, in keeping with the expedited order of removal that is issued as a matter of course, it's relatively simple. The adult is reunited quickly with his or her child, and the family returned home as a unit. In this scenario, there is only a brief separation. When it does become more of an issue is when parents start claiming asylum. If you claim asylum, adults are going to be detained longer, and the law is that you are not allowed to hold children for longer than 20 days in custody. And that's the Flores consent decree. A ruling by the Ninth Circuit extended the 20-day limit to children who come as part of family units. So even if you would like to hold a family unit together, even if you want the kid to stay with mommy and daddy, you cannot by operation of law. You are forbidden from doing so because the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals wanted to make it less appealing for the government to keep families in custody. They wanted all of these families released into the general population in the United States. Rich Lowry writes, the clock ticking on the time the government can hold a child will almost always run out before an asylum claim is settled. The migrant is allowed 10 days to seek an attorney. There may be continuances or other complications. This creates the choice of either releasing the adults and the children together into the country, pending the adjudication of the asylum claim, or holding the adults and releasing the children. If the adult is held, HHS places the kid with a responsible party in the U.S., ideally a relative. Even if Flores didn't exist, the government would be very constrained in how many family units it can accommodate. ICE only has about 3,000 family spaces in shelters. It is also limited in its overall space at the border, which is overwhelmed by the ongoing influx. So family units can go home quickly. All they have to do is not plead asylum, and they can all go home together. Also, there's a better way to claim asylum. So the separation of parents from children only happens if you are arrested. If you walk up to a border station in the United States, you don't go between border stations. You just walk up to, for example, the U.S.-Mexico border, down near San Diego. If you just walk up to that border and you say, I need to claim asylum, you will not be arrested. You're only arrested if you try to cross between the borders, because then the idea is probably you're lying to get into the country. Otherwise, you should just walk up to Border Patrol, not along the border, but in specific border stations, which everybody knows where they are, and then you claim asylum, and then you're not arrested at all. Then you get to stay with your kids.